sitting here in our beautiful office space. There's patty cake. And I'm on my annual retreat in the new year. And I've been designing aspects of this course during my retreat. So if you get a sense of, I don't know, mindfulness practices, and meditation, and a sense of connectedness, maybe that's part of why that is filtering through into the content. One of the traditions that I honor and respect is the Buddhist mindfulness tradition. Life has gifted me with this beautiful Buddhist robe, which I only wear on retreats, integrating a number of spiritualities into my way of life, which I've articulated in books and talks over the years. I've taken a kind of a minimalist approach, I suppose, of simplicity to my own personal spirituality. And that helps me in my work with other people because it frames up a way of orienting myself to let go of my own preconceived ideas, to let go of my attachments as much as I possibly can, and to actually practice unconditional positive regard, which is that comes out of the Rogerian person-centered psychotherapy and psychiatry traditions. Rogers championed the values of a therapist's innate sense of presence and being with another person. I think these values and the integral nature of how they fit together and create the ideal environment for therapeutic work is an incredibly valuable and important insight, practice of personal and professional development. It transforms our sensibilities over time. It literally shifts our identity, our core identity, and it allows us to be more available, I think, to ourselves in the moment, but also to other people that we work with. The other aspect to this, I suppose, is that I work in a secular and non-sectarian environment. In my work as a counselor and psychotherapist and a behavior specialist, we work the National Disability Insurance Scheme in Australia. We have developed a very robust ethical and policy and protocol framework because we work within the government-funded sector, as well as we work in the private sector. We see private clients who engage with us from around the world now that we're largely online through a telehealth model. The origins and trends of animal-assisted therapy, from my point of view, in really looking at this whole field, there is a number of unique insights and lessons that I've taken out of this study. The study has looked at the science and ecology that has emerged over history during the high, and the late medieval periods. Certain individuals have championed the development of a framework to understand our place in nature and our identity as Homo sapiens and as human beings. The purpose of my providing this detailed information is that it encourages you to think through what are the core values of your work in animal-assisted therapy. Why are you interested in doing this work, and where do your values overlap and interact with your work with animal-assisted therapy? When you understand your own personal value system, beliefs, and attitudes, when you take time to examine that, it brings up a kind of awareness that awakens us to the quality of what we have to offer ourselves and other people. And when we understand that quality, I think that's when our work really takes off. That's when things fall into place. The universe has synergies. The universe will listen to your awakening, and it will draw resources into your life and into other people's lives on behalf of your desire and intentionality for those people that you're working with. I've seen this time and time again. I see it on a daily basis now. It continually astonishes me how synergetic the universe is. It brings people on our path that are meant to be there, to share some time with us for some reason. And that's a mutual process. It's incredibly privileged and honorable. It's an exclusive process because that person will never come around again. How precious our lives are and how temporary, and yet how, in a sense, eternal and spiritual is this dimension of our meaning making and how we make meaning together in our interactions with each other, in our human communications with each other. I think this is part of the reason why these historical figures are not just about the ideas that they produced. It's not just about what they produced. It's about the fact that they were individuals who lived within a cultural and personal and professional environment of quality and dimensions that helped them to manifest the insights and creativity that changed the global perspectives on science, on truth and meaning and purpose and destiny and why are we here on this planet and what does it mean to be here and how can we improve our lives? Really important to highlight these values. The section in your document looks at the history of animals, which is a fascinating document written by Aristotle. And I highlight this simply because that book on the history of animals was pivotal for a period of 2,000 years. And it's still a pivotal document. It's an historical document that looks at the nature of on the planet and of human beings and our relationships with them. It details what we would call the diversity of species by observations of animals in nature. It was the first time it was really clearly articulated, species and subspecies, although it didn't use those particular words because that came from Darwin much later. But the book articulates how groupings of animals, is a more accurate term, groupings of animals share certain characteristics so that the study and understanding and science behind animal-assisted work relies on this history of ideas, this history of sensibilities, this history of values that emerged well before Christ. Then we detail the history and the value of veterinary medicine, and that's a fascinating story. Because we're based in Australia, we noted when the first College of Veterinary Medicine was founded in Melbourne, the values and developments there in the care for animals is an astounding story of innovation, dedication, and profound sacrifice of certain individuals' energy, time, and resources to help animals. Then we talk about animal-assisted therapy, its historical developments, and the current uses of animal-assisted therapy. Every area that we work in, personally and professionally, involves a really dynamic sensibility of context. The context always defines what we actually do. Our knowledge is a practice that happens within an environment. Environments are always about context and relationships. Our knowledge is about environment and relationships. There's an internal environment within ourself personally. The personal environment is dynamic and important. It defines so much related to the environment and the values of the work that we do. The other layer is a social and cultural environment that we work within on a daily basis. A lot of us fail to reflect, to come to terms with assumptions, bias, and prejudices that are just underlying beliefs, structures within our, what I call the presuppositions of our knowledge base. Our presuppositions, this is a theory that comes from neurolinguistic psychotherapy and Ericksonian hypnotherapy. This is an in-depth study of our consciousness and how does this actually function and how can we make changes within our consciousness. Now, this is the field of advanced psychotherapy that I've been practicing in for many years. And presuppositions are the meta environment that supports and sustains our beliefs, values, and attitudes, that are the active part that manifest through the work of our frontal lobes, because our frontal lobes are the filtering mechanism that allows us to focus and to make decisions and to decide on actions in our environment today, here and now. The frontal lobes have a very focusing role within our behavior. The presuppositions are the meta operating system that sits behind the action and function of our frontal lobes, of our active engagement and choices. Most people don't go into that meta universe that exists within all of us, but imagine the frontal lobes are probably only about 2% of the wealth of resources that exist within our mind. Our minds are not just stuck in the head. Our brains, our minds are part of our nervous system, which has roots and extensions that move down through the neck into the spinal cord, all the way down to our buttocks, and filter out in a neurological network that is incredibly complex and integral and dynamic. And most of us don't get that even our hearts have a neurology around them. They call it the heart brain, the heart nervous system. And there's been a lot of studies on that, particularly in the last decade or so. The heart carries its own intelligence. This is proven in the science. Oh, there's a whole science around the gut-brain connection and how our gut, digestive system, our stomachs, intimately interconnected and send signals back and forth between the gut, the stomach, and the brain. We have the term the blood-brain barrier. The system is integral and interwoven. Yeah, it's profound. When you really get into this stuff, it's really profound. Animal-assisted therapy is defined on Wikipedia with alternative or complementary type of therapy. I kind of like that in one sense, but I also don't agree with that in another sense. I think that animal-assisted therapy is integrated by practitioners into very mainstream approaches to medicine, health, wellness, behavioral support, cognitive behavioral work within psychology. Animal-assisted therapy is integrated right across the board in very mainstream approaches. So there you go. I'm already critiquing the public information, and it's important that you do this as well. I really don't think that's true. The goal of animal-assisted intervention, it says, is to improve a patient's, I would say a client's or an individual's social, emotional, or cognitive functioning. That's a useful summary. Studies have documented some positive effects of the therapy. Animal-assisted therapy can be classified by the type of animal, the target population, how the animal is incorporated into the therapeutic plan, or I would say the therapeutic method or objectives. Use of these animals in therapies has shown positive results in many cases. We're going to look at some of the literature later on in our discussions. It was interesting to find out that animal-assisted therapy was used back in the 18th century. Doesn't surprise me. And I'm sure that there are earlier examples of animal-assisted therapy. I'm sure that they may or may not be documented in certain ways, and that documentation needs to be re-examined because we're coming at it from a new perspective historically already in different fields of practice. When we come up with a new way of understanding life and meaning, we have to revisit the historical sources because they were not read with those insights in mind. And when you read the historical sources from the perspective of an animal assistance therapist, you're going to get more from that history, guaranteed, almost guaranteed. You'll find ancient sources that suggest this kind of work. I think some of this comes out particularly in countries like continental India, the Vedic scriptures. If there is a tremendous synergy, a tremendous acknowledgement of our interactional relationship with creation and with the creatures that exist on this planet, and that we have an ethical and moral role of custodianship and care. Aboriginal Australians, with their dynamic and rich history that goes back so many thousands of years, the core cultural value is based on reciprocity. The whole concept of custodianship is based on co-responsibility within the environment with the creatures that exist on this planet. There's documented evidence, which I'll discuss later in our conversation, of the relationships and dreaming of the dingo in various Australian tribes. The history is rich. The relationship with animals in therapeutic ways is documented. It's just that our current understandings can be limited because we want things to say only modern scientific insights. But when we understand science in a holistic way, that science itself emerges and exists within culture and value, wow, we understand the history then. There's many examples of animal-assisted therapy back through the modern use of psychiatry in facilities where people were treated. There's use of animals within mainstream hospital systems, both historically and currently. I remember my teacher and mentor would tell me stories about working with Vietnam veterans. He would share those cases where they would bring animals into work with people recovering from post-traumatic stress disorder, from experiences of violence and experiences of war. This is back to the first part of the 1900s and subsequently throughout the First and Second World Wars. These uses of animals in therapeutic ways is in some ways hidden. The documentation is hidden inside probably clinical notes from psychiatrists from different hospitals. And it may not be even published by this stage, that information. There's an increasing recognition of the value of human and pet bonds. Yeah, this is so true, and this is still evolving today. I think that our propensity and bias and prejudice in the mainstream is that we devalue pets. Oh, that's just a pet. Oh, that's just domestic. Oh, that's just in the home. We have not really highlighted the incredible value of pets as therapy, particularly within specific cases like working with children with autism, which is one of our specialist areas, where we have helped families to acquire their own pet as therapy in the home. And we work with them online through telehealth with our therapeutic dogs in our practice. The parallel between our living with these dogs and working with them as therapists and our dogs as therapists, acknowledging that level empowers the individual living in their home to realize how important it is to live with an animal and how many skills, social skills, emotional skills, diffusing of anxiety skills, reducing behavioral escalation skills. The pet as therapy engages with all of these levels, and it's really quite astonishing how important this is. It's in the very early days, because this hasn't yet come out in the literature to the extent that it should be, because these modes of operating within a therapeutic framework are happening all the time. I know of therapists across Australia, and they're doing dynamic work. It's happening all around. But a lot of us are at the coalface, as we say in Australia. That is, we're in the midst of daily practice. We're not so much oriented on publishing that as research. I used to be oriented towards publishing a lot of research in various fields of practice over the years, and over 250 publications in various media and a couple of dozen books. I have found that over time, though, as I get older and gray hair comes on, and my passion is more in community practice. The passion there is in helping people solve real problems and moving forward in life. And the sharing of information with people that changes their perspectives, that gives them new resources and new capacities and new ways of understanding life, that value enhances their personal and professional development, and not for the sake of itself, but because it radically changes the nature of a person's life. Right? It changes our core identity. When we take on a new awareness, new knowledge, and we can apply that in a practical way that changes our life, changes other people's lives, that's where it's at for me. And that's why I've always been so excited and invested all of my energy in helping other people and to grow and to learn and to manifest what they need and want in daily life. I've seen a recent case in the last few months of animal recovery work after surgery, how the animal in the individual's home and online with a therapist has greatly enhanced a sense of peacefulness and recovery dimensions that are so important post-surgery. Nowadays, post-surgery recovery happens at home. There's more flexibility, but the individual needs to have access to a therapeutic pet or a therapeutic animal via a therapist or a visitor. Animal-assisted work continues to be used in psychiatry and mental health and wellness. We have cases where we work with people who have schizophrenia, who live with a pet, and the person may come to us having lived with the pet for years, but they may not be conscious or aware of how therapeutic that pet really is. So therapists can highlight the value of the pet within the home. So we talk about the animal. We know the animal's name. We ask the client, how is Susie going? Susie the cat, right? How is Susie going? What did she get up to this week? And the client shares the antics of Susie and all of her adventures. And within those stories emerge really important therapeutic outcomes and values. The therapist can highlight these and integrate that into a therapeutic method. And it's overlooked at the expense of our clients, because as therapists, our work really should be about highlighting the lived experience that our clients come with already. Too many therapists are too abstract, too stuck in theory. Theory and abstractness is not where change happens in people's lives. Change happens when people experience change. Change happens when we learn to create change by experiential processes, experiential learning. This is really important. It's central to learning theory, but it's critically central to therapeutic theory. Experiential change in therapy happens when people experience change in therapy. When's the last time you visited your therapist or talked to them online that you actually experienced change during the session? Therapists don't necessarily work on that at all. Therapists will talk about the problems. They'll give you a diagnosis, especially psychologists will give you a diagnosis, and they might create some kind of abstract treatment plan and send you off with some homework. The homework might have an intention of being experiential, but who likes homework? I mean, hello, whoever really enjoys homework? Well, maybe a minority might like homework. I've been a very studious and scholarly individual, but I don't like the concept of homework. I do like the concept of exploring, um, finding new pathways, not homework. It's engaging with life. It's doing a project. It's doing something active. Even learning online is an active project for me. It's engaging, and it creates new ideas and sparks fires of inquiry and curiosity. And this is what people are looking for. Animal assistance work is an experiential field of practice. I think that's why it excites me so much, because it's based on our lived experience with animals and of a therapeutic engagement that is experiential. Stress management, anxiety management, cognitive rehabilitation treatment, these can be very experiential issues, very contemporary issues that we struggle with in daily life and recovery, and that are important within animal-assisted therapy work. Behavioral health and support, hospital settings integration, for example, cancer ward treatments and support of children. Animals have a big role in prisons, in visiting inmates. And there's been some work on having animals living in the cell with the inmate, and the rehabilitation processes involved there, in the individual learning to care for a creature and to learn socialization skills or unlearn negative socialization at the same time. An extensive use of animals in nursing homes and also in occupational therapy. We'll explore some of that literature later on. Canine assisted therapy and dolphin and equine, horse assisted therapy and pig assisted therapy. These are just a few examples. I think about hamsters and guinea pigs. And for many people, chickens, or chooks, as we say in Australia, are a therapeutic animal for many people. Tending the chooks in the backyard is an old Australian tradition. And because of the climate here, this is a common part of the tradition in the country. Farm animals of various kinds have had huge therapeutic value. Having relationships with the farm animals, the cows especially. Relationships with cows is a huge thing for many people. And another animal that's quite huge in Australia is the sheep. The wealth of that culture and value and the therapeutic nature of that is yet untold, especially in the therapeutic literature. I encourage people to think about this. We need to put this information out there. It needs to be shared. Dolphins in Australia is another huge area. The work with dolphins has been documented, but there's a lot more work that could be done. And dolphins are an amazing creature that have a dynamic impact and influence therapeutically and in so many ways influence our core sense of identity as human beings. Dolphins are amazing creatures, as are whales. The therapeutic value of whales is another one. When you look at this from a perspective, from the indigenous, more cultural points of view, all animals and all of nature have a deep, profound therapeutic value because we are in relationship with, relationship to all of these creatures, the last few centuries in our mentality since the medieval era have worked to separate us from nature, to separate us from other animals. But we are an animal ourselves. We are part of our context, our environment, our ecology. Because of this, our interconnectivity and our synthesis, our ecosynthesis, the integration of our identity is already embedded in us in a core sense. It's been filtered out in our socialization into the modern culture, but it's still there. It's part of the meta value system that supports us and that sustains us and that gives us the resources for survival on this planet. These factors need to be highlighted more. For animal-assisted therapy work to really advance, I think that we need a new paradigm, a new value system, new beliefs, new attitudes. We need to get over modernism and move beyond postmodernism to a new sensibility that is integral and holistic, that is deeply ecological, that decenters the person within ecology, that decenters our cognitive capacity within the context of our relationability, our ethics of care and co-responsibility. We need to find a new paradigm that is integral, that weaves together the mysteries of all this history of Western science, knowledge, and not just Western, but incorporates the indigenous, the Eastern, and many other cultural models within a more universal, more human, more global ethic of care. And I think that animal-assisted work is an applied field of practice that has the potential to contribute enormous gains to our global convergence, our global human evolution. These and many other movements that are happening currently right now are having an enormous influence on our potentials to explore an integral, holistic, and synergetic ecosynthesis model of human agency and personal growth and professional development, certainly. But these layers are going to create new forms of culture. This always happens. Culture evolves through experiential learning. Just as our experiential learning helps us to reflect on our cultural values and meanings, our spirituality is how we make our sense of meaning. Secular and atheistic sensibilities and meaning are also an expression of how we make our sense of meaning. In that sense, it's a spirituality. Actually, spirituality simply means the study of spirit, the study of pneuma, which means breath, energy, or breath. Spirituality is the study of life. Ecology is the study of life. These fields are interconnected and interwoven and have a great deal to offer. Animal-assisted therapy is also a study of life, a study of meaning, a study of how do we apply these values in practice on a daily basis. Thank you for listening.